very good evening. You're watching India Acends. I'm Gauri Divedi. Let's start the show this evening with headlines coming in. First up, as the Ukraine war completes 3 years, Washington partners up with what was once a pariah, that is Moscow, and dumps Zelensky and pretty much the whole of Europe.
The US administration regarding certain USAID activities and funding. These are obviously very deeply troubling. This has led to concerns about foreign interference in India's internal affairs. Relevant departments and agencies are looking into this matter.
Deeply troubling. That's what MEA has said. It's raised concerns over foreign interference amidst the USAID row after Donald Trump's allegations earlier in the week about $21 million being given for boosting voter turnout. Democracy in Dhaka plummets to yet another unprecedented low as radicals tussle for Sheikh Hasina's ouster credit on social media as the world has nothing but to watch on in despair and disgust. Bharat stands on the precipice of history as the Maha Kumbh, the world's largest religious gathering, nears its climactic end. Accusations of brazen ill-treatment, shameful racist remarks and brutal high-handed response from Odisha's private university KIIT after Prakriti Lamsal's alleged suicide leave a blot on India-Nepal social ties. On to our top story this week on India Acends. The war in Ukraine will soon be marking its third anniversary. What started as a Russian invasion aimed at a quick victory has turned into Europe's largest conflict since the Second World War. But 3 years on, it's not just Ukraine, but Zelensky's fight to be politically relevant that is at the center again. In fact, he's fighting for his existence. Ukraine continues to struggle. The global dynamics surrounding this war have now shifted. With the new president in America, the White House, global relationships have changed. Diplomatic conversations have in fact changed. And the war's third year is set to prove pivotal in reshaping the global order. This report tells you what all has this war done so far, where it has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, reduced cities to rubble, saw hired mercenaries from North Korea to Africa to Europe fighting a war with absolutely no ideological moorings. Take a look.
A dictator without elections. He's not going to have a country left. Got to move.
3 years into the war, Ukraine's fight has taken a dark turn. Zelensky, once a symbol of resistance, celebrated by the West, is now under attack. President Donald Trump's return to the White House has upended everything. The US, once Kyiv's staunch ally, has turned its back, signaling a potential shift towards Russia, once a global pariah. Trump's America First mantra, now focused on ending the war, has ignited chaos.
He refuses to have elections, is low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, yes, sir, to say that he's pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
Президент Трамп з великою повагою до нього відносимося як до лідера народу, який ми дуже поважаємо, американський народ, який нас постійно підтримує. На жаль, живе в цьому дезінформаційному просторі.
Europe's one solid backing of Ukraine is now a distant memory. Leaders like German Chancellor Scholz and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are sidelined, leaving NATO fractured and vulnerable. Zelensky's position crumbling. Internal corruption scandals, fading NATO hopes, and the US retreating have left Zelensky in a desperate fight. The war's toll devastating. Cities reduced to rubble, civilians caught in the chaos, and international fighters on both sides, further complicating the battlefield. As Russia pushes forward, the question isn't if Ukraine can hold, it's how long can it last. With Russian advances and relentless missile strikes, the future is uncertain, and the death toll continues to rise. The world watches, but will it be too late to stop the bleeding?
Well, as the war in Ukraine completes its third anniversary, its outcome remains less uncertain by each passing day. There are shifting alliances. There's now a fractured Europe. There are growing tensions. It's clear that this war is not just about Ukraine. It's about the future of global politics. And this may very well be the end of NATO as we know it. Possibly the dawn of a new era in cross-Atlantic relationships, one where Donald Trump will likely settle his differences with China in the Indo-Pacific with the hundreds of billions of dollars he intends to prevent spending on Ukraine, which his predecessor was doing till now. But one thing is certain, Zelensky is on his way out, with or without an election. Wide angle story on the show. Over in Pakistan, after a year of political deadlock with Imran Khan taking on the deep state, it seems the tide has turned, well, against Imran Khan and in favor of the Pakistani army. On the face of it, there are some economic numbers that seem to be adding up well for Shahbaz Sharif. His government has now found some early successes in battling inflation, which has really been the biggest burning issue in Pakistan. Inflation has in fact dropped to single digits. Shahbaz Sharif has been quick to credit his efforts, emphasizing that it's been a shift from the past mismanagement. In fact, remittances are also up. Current account has also shown a surplus. Any positive news on the economy, no matter how little, no matter how insignificant, empowers the Pakistani army. It empowers the deep state. And the army, even during the country's deepest economic crisis, has always found resources for its arms purchases. And now with more than a sliver of positive economic data, the army will be emboldened further. But long before that, Imran Khan's political options will soon run out. Once the blue-eyed boy of the deep state, Imran Khan fell out of favors and has been taking on the government since last February's compromised election. Well, Imran Khan's efforts at negotiation and power building appear to be losing steam and will not be entertained. It may be the end of the road for his ambitious long-term economic outlook for Pakistan, even as the long-term economic outlook remains grim. There have been patterns that are similar to what happened in the previous economic cycles. Growth was short-lived, leaving the country grappling with growing deficits, dwindling foreign reserves. But long before that, Imran Khan will possibly be running out of all options to remain relevant in Pakistani politics. All right, on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back with lots more on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. You're watching India Acends. Turning our attention now to the other historic story. In fact, Bharat stands on the precipice of history, really, as the Maha Kumbh, the world's largest religious gathering, nears its climactic end. In just 5 days, on the 26th of February, nearly 60 crore, 600 million people from every part of the world would have taken the holy dip, marking the largest congregation in human history for any religious, cultural, social event after a 144-year alignment of the stars. This isn't just about numbers. It's about India's ability, its strength to do the unthinkable, something that has not been done anywhere by humanity. Before we talk more about the learnings that the Kumbh presents to the world, take a look at this report that really sums up the perfect alignment between the soul and Kumbh.
purpose binds these millions of devotees moksha, liberation from the endless cycle of life, death, and rebirth. People from New York to New Delhi, from Tokyo to Timbuktu, all stand united by this sacred quest. As the sun sets over the Ganges, a profound truth becomes apparent. Life is fleeting, but the journey of the soul is eternal. The sacred river offers more than purification of the body. It cleanses the soul, providing each pilgrim with a chance to wash away their sins, to begin anew, to find peace. With each offering that ascends into the sky, the Maha Kumbh continues its timeless rhythm, life, death, and rebirth, attracting believers and non-Sanatanis. Even the harshest skeptics have been silenced by the scale and fluidity of this monumental event. The meticulous organization and the overwhelming number of souls gathered here speak to the undeniable power of belief and the relentless human spirit, and India's ability to organize big-ticket events seamlessly. The sheer numbers are mind-boggling, from almost 3,000 AI-enabled CCT cameras to 160,000 tents and more than 50,000 cops manning the area non-stop for 40 days. The meticulous organization and the overwhelming number of souls gathered here speak to the undeniable power of belief and the relentless human spirit, and India's ability to organize big-ticket events seamlessly to our humanity's pursuit of the divine.
In fact, Harvard Business School has studied the Kumbh, marveled at the sheer scale, and there are lessons for all, from global management lessons in balancing sustainability concerns along with building size. Every 12 years, a city larger than the size of New York comes up, only to be dismantled with minimal environmental damage. Usage of technology that offers real-time solutions that are both affordable and scalable. Everyone from epidemiologists to doctors to scientists to tech experts, for them, Kumbh offers a perfect opportunity to test technology, to test their solutions at a scale that is impossible anywhere in the world. In fact, to talk more on this, Harvard's Professor Tarun Khanna, who's been studying the Kumbh for a while now, joins me on India Acends. Professor Khanna, thank you so much for speaking to me, and you've been studying the Kumbh Mela for over a decade now. What has been that one long-term opinion that you have about this festival across its various editions?
Thank you, Gauri. We first started studying the Kumbh in 2012, which was a year before the last so-called Maha Kumbh in 2013. And it was really the brainchild of two of my colleagues, Diana Eck, who's a professor of religion and philosophy, and Rahul Mehrotra, who's a professor of urban planning and an architect. And based on their suggestion, my institute at Harvard together a collection of almost, I want to say, between 50 and 70 researchers who went to the Kumbh. And I think for the first time we had an amazing tent on the Kumbh that was a pure research tent. And I think it was sort of a bit of a transformational moment for research, at least, possibly for the Kumbh Adhikaris, because they saw that people were studying it and were intrigued and participated. And I have to say they've been incredibly supportive. The state government and the central government have been very supportive of these efforts. And what's happened since then is literally a dozen, maybe 24 institutions around the world have picked up on this idea. And now I'm told there are so many research efforts by Indian and global universities that are proceeding there. So it's really lovely. My overall sense, speaking a little bit parochially as an academic at Harvard, is that it's a wonderful platform on which a lot of other creative things that are socially useful can happen. Right? So in addition to being, the most incredible spiritual and religious event for Hindus in particular, it just is a magical place on which you can learn so much about human behavior, business organization, traffic flows, epidemics, temporary urbanism, you name it. And we tried very hard to initiate an encompassing 360-degree view of what learnings can come out of this coming back. So that's been my dominant impression.
Okay. So how do you think technology has been used in this edition, the Maha Kumbh, where a lot of people say, experts say, it's been the perfect blend of technology and tradition? What are your thoughts?
You know, even before large human gatherings, I would say that there's a more fundamental lesson, right? Which is the way society is modernized, right? So I'm a student of economic development primarily. The way societies modernize is by bringing in new ways of doing things. It may be literally the things that we think of as technology. It may also be new practices, for instance. But the trick is to do it in a way that doesn't cause you to lose your center of gravity, your civilizational ethos. In Hindi, we would say your Sanskriti, right? Your culture. And what I really like to think of the Kumbh as is it's a laboratory, ultimately, where you can see the merger of tradition and modernity, right? So that's a general thing, right? It applies to large gatherings, but also applies more generally. I'll give you an example. Some years ago, my student and I, Amlik Singh in Bangalore, started a company called Chai Point, which is now India's largest tea retailer, formal tea retailer. And the reason I'm picking on this to make the same point is there's nothing as traditional in India as having a hot cup of masala chai or adrak chai or something like that. So it's part of our tradition. We have it multiple times a day. We enjoy it, bond over it. Families and friends get together. But Amlik Singh and his team have really built a 21st century 5G compatible, biometric compatible, robot driven way of delivering very high quality chai, right? Without changing the ethos of how chai is consumed or the taste, what have you. So again, it's this blend of modernity and tradition that to me is the most interesting lesson of the Kumbh.
Okay. Professor Khanna, I have to ask you this about what would you like to say to the naysayers? There have been a fair bunch of naysayers. What's your message to them?
Well, to be honest, I don't know who the naysayers are or what they've said. There's always room for improvement in the naysayers. In the logistics and management of the Kumbh. I think there's always room to do better forecasting. This is why, as a faculty member in a School of Management at the Harvard Business School, it's another reason why the Kumbh is so fascinating. It's a massive, massive management challenge and an organizational challenge. Even just a small effort for a relatively small company like Chai Point, which is on site with 10 or 15 stores and 200-300 people, with the supply chain disruptions and prominent people arriving and things getting shut down, security and so on. It's a real lesson in how to adapt to fast-moving circumstances. And that's a general lesson. So you can learn a lot. So to your naysayers, I would say, provide some suggestions for how you think. Get involved in learning from the Kumbh and get involved in making some suggestions. It's fair to criticize, but criticism with involvement and suggestions is even more welcome. And I would always distinguish between the intention of the Kumbh, the main intention of the Kumbh, which is spirituality and a communal bond. That should be the focus. The efforts that we're describing are intended to make two contributions, I think. One is to enhance the experience of the Kumbh, which I firmly believe can be done with a judicious infusion of better management and better use of technology that is becoming increasingly available. And the second is to use the Kumbh as a laboratory of humanity and to learn from various people who come together. So on both those fronts, naysaying is fine, but it would be better if it had some constructive suggestions also.
That's a great feedback, naysayers, to the naysayers, that there should be constructive criticism of the Kumbh. Thank you so much, Professor Khanna, for joining in as the top voice this week on India Acends. All right, moving on to the quick take segment on the show. First up, USAID, the $45 billion arm of the US government meant to align with the foreign policy goals of the American government, seems to have meddled with elections in the Indian subcontinent. There are conflicting reports about where exactly did USAID spend in the electoral process, either in India or in Bangladesh. But the figure is known, that is $21 million. The question that we are asking is why and whose voters will actually be boosted by such an exercise. These are revelations that are part of the crackdown by the DOGE over expensive and excessive spending by the US government, but brings to fore serious charges about possible role of the American state in elections in Bangladesh. In fact, last year, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had claimed that America tried to overthrow her government for geopolitical reasons. Hasina's claims may have been rejected by America, but it needs to come clean on the motive of boosting voter turnout in a foreign country. Second, the tragic death of Prakriti Lamsal, a Nepalese student at the private university in Odisha, KIIT, has ignited a storm of controversy, casting a dark shadow over India's higher education landscape. Accusations of ill treatment, racist remarks, and an alleged high-handed response from the university authorities have shamed the institution and left a strain on India's international reputation. As Nepal-India relations forged over centuries, they now seem to have been impacted. The situation grew more complex, with KIIT's troubling U-turns, dismissive actions towards those grieving students. Yet despite this black spot, with New Delhi's unwavering support, Nepalese students, one of the largest foreign student groups in India, will continue to seek education here. After all, a single blot cannot erase a long and entire legacy of the two countries. Next up, India's strength on the global stage has been underscored once again at the G20 meeting in Johannesburg, where External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar sat down with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi just hours ago. As the world watched, the two countries took significant steps towards mending ties. Remember, this has been a process that's been going on ever since the two sides declared disengagement in the last couple of weeks. Mending ties have also meant that there's going to be resumption of the much revered Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Direct flights between India and China are also set to resume. This isn't just diplomacy, it's also a testament to India's unyielding commitment to dialogue and stability. Despite past tensions, India's strength lies in its capacity to bridge divides and ensure peace, all while fostering people-to-people connections. In a world divided by conflict, India remains the unwavering voice for unity and collaboration. What looks like ahead is going forward, the India-China relationship, while the trust factor still needs to be addressed in the long term. In the short term, it looks like both sides are making strides to move past their Galwan clash almost 5 years back. All right, that's all the time we have in this edition of India Acends. Thanks so much for watching.